Okay, guys, I'm going to go over the tips and tricks like Dale just said. I made a list. I actually had some help. Bill over here, one of our consultants, he'll throw emails of things he finds, so this was one of his little finds. The first one, the fiscal year period name change. Turn off posting reports that you don't need, and then we'll talk about that as well. Editing AP check stubs, smart list, and reminder for missing 1099 tax ID and batch ID list. So I'm going to go through this. Like on the presentation, I kind of have screenshots of everything, but I think Brad will send that out, so they'll have. We're going to go through each one of these, but that's pretty much what my presentation has, but I'll kind of go through all these within GP. Yeah. Huh? I just put it in.
Oh.
Okay. All right. So the first one. All right. All right. First one is when you're when you set up a new fiscal year. I actually didn't know this. Bill he found this. When you go to your fiscal year setup. So I did this instead of period 1. If you look at your period 16, I'll show you. I kind of did this for you. But usually we just have period 1, 2, 3 as your dates. For a regular year, that might be okay, and that. But if your year's cut up, if your fiscal year end is October, sometimes it's confusing on when your year is. So when you put on, so for 17, so all you did when you set up your new year, you just kind of go through and just put your months on there. So it's just easier for you and your users to see information. So when you're going into I'll go into an account. So now it's just February, so it's just easier to see. So, it's not a big thing, but it is sometimes a little helpful for some of your users.
Particularly good, like you said, if it's a fiscal year.
If it's different than
period is March.
Sometimes you have to count what month we're in, right? So things like that you can change. I don't know. Okay. No, you can change it anytime. Do you? Oh, okay. I never knew you could do that. So does anybody else use it? Let's see. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you're just trying to say you're just talking about the admin. Yeah. So everybody who knows where you start your fiscal year. That was just how I usually get into it. So it's under your admin and the company and fiscal periods. So that's the first one there. So the next one I'm going to talk about is turning off posting reports that you don't need. I know I've been working with a lot of clients lately, and I've talked about this on one of my user meetings. Just to turn off some of your reports, or I had someone I was just working with and they were printing up, so it was set to print and it was printing up all these reports and they don't need them and they didn't use them. So I just showed them how to turn those on. So if you go under admin again and you're posting, and I don't know if people have been in here, Dana was shaking her head, so I know she has. And you go in by module and you can pick your different categories. Let's do let me get up the tables here. Those have more reports usually. So you see down here it has this one set up with analytical accounting that has the AA posting entry, checkbook posting journal, distribution detail, summary, all these reports. And right now it's asking a question. And on my printout that I have for you, all these different things, I have kind of what all these buttons are really small, so it's hard to see sometimes. But this one here's the screen, printer, file, if you want to do that. If you don't want these prints at all, you can just kind of turn these off. You don't need them. Just turn them off. You don't need them. It's as easy as that. Somebody I was working with, there was like 5 reports printing every time. And it was just, I'm like, you can turn those off, or, so we went through those. So just do your entries and see what prints up. If you don't need it, if it's nothing you ever use, then just turn it off. And then you save the tree. Does anybody have any questions with that?
One of the things I would point out there is that if you sometimes use a report, you can have it go to the screen, right? And
right.
If you want to print, you can print it. If
yep.
you want, you can cancel it. You can have it ask you, do you want to print it or not, after the question mark.
Right.
The screen pops up, this is what you want to do with this one.
And all these, I have all those on, like I said, those are hard to kind of see sometimes, but I have all of them listed, like where do you want it to screen, like Bill said, printing instead of always a printing, or, so yeah, it's just, I think a lot of people use those already. Good. Anybody have any questions with this? Okay. All right, my next one is just editing a check stub. So I have, just by coincidence, I had a check batch that I started. All right. And it's not on. All right, so I don't have a check batch. So let's, I do not know what happened to that check batch. I will maybe kind of go through this because it might, I'll go back to my, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you're in a check batch, you have a credit memo in here, and my check batch is gone, so I'm not sure what happened with that, but this was going to be easier. So if you have your check batch, everything's printed, you don't want that credit memo that looks like it was just a mistake. It didn't mean to be there. That 150, it was done in, the way I did this, it was done in April. It meant to be in May, so I just did a credit memo. But if you don't want to have that all print on your, the mistakes of the customer of all your credit memos and things like that, you can just leave it off the check stub, so it won't print then. So if you go to, when you're in your select batch, you go to edit check, then you come down here and you can go to check stub, and then you can click which ones you don't want on there, want to show it on there. So this one, sometimes you make a mistake, you don't want it to really print on your check, you can kind of take that off. So I apologize it's not on there, but does anybody have any questions with that?
So if something's applied, it'll still go through, but it just won't print.
Right. So this one was applied. This one I had it. I just made it that, that I did it in April and I meant to do it in, just saying, what is that credit memo for? I didn't, So it's just something, if you have credit memos, thank you, that aren't on there. All right, the next one I'm going to have, and we found this, a 1099 report. If you do a smart list, so I know everybody's done with their 1099s, and you can do this with anything you have, you want to put reminders for, but this one coming up was a 1099 list. So say you want to have a smart list that you want to, as the account manager or an AP person even, anytime a vendors put in, but their 1099 number is not put in, and they are a 1099 vendor. So we would go to the smart list. We would go under purchasing, and again, I have this on my slideshow to show you all the directions. Go to vendors, go to 1099 vendors here. And right now, it will put up everything, all the 1099 vendors. If I add the columns, and I add the tax ID, and hit next. Tax ID number, hit OK. So right now it's coming up with which ones have the tax ID, which ones don't. I can save that as my favorite. I can add a reminder. I can add that and add the reminder. I have it where it's just equal to 0. I'm also going to fit in here on my search. I want it to come on my home screen. Anything that has not been doesn't have a tax ID in it. So I'll do my tax ID number less than 0. There we go. So I have that, and I'll modify that. So now when I go back on my home screen, go up here in your home, and this will come up anytime somebody puts in a tax ID that's not there. Now I have this 1099 with tax ID, and I can just click on it. So anytime that somebody doesn't put a tax ID, and once I put those all in, then you won't have that reminder. But every day when you come in, you can see that that's on your reminder list. And you can do this with anything that you're, any kind of thing you can want a reminder of. If somebody puts something in, I don't know what you could use, a customer, trying to think. Anybody have any examples for everybody that they could use?
I use this for a lot. What I really found value with was I would have my payable staff do make journal entries to my payables control account.
Yep.
Of course, that screws up your sub-ledger to your control account.
Right.
So I would have every morning, the system would tell me if any entries were made yesterday to the control account. It would pop up right on my screen. I know right away. I go talk to my payable person and say, what were you doing yesterday? Why did you make that entry?
So I don't know if anybody uses the reminders or their home screen to do that, but it is a nice feature. So you can just, when you come in the morning, you see that this has come up, and you can go, you can be the payables person, or you can be the account manager, just asking what's happened and put that in there. So you can do that with anything you can think of that you want to be reminded of somebody entered something incorrectly. So does anybody have any questions on that? No? The next thing I'm going to talk about is just a list. Is everybody, and I've had a lot of people in the last little bit when they're doing their payables checks, payables entries, receivables, it doesn't matter. There's journal entries even. Does everybody do the edit checklist to kind of see if there's errors? When you do, I have this set up. So when you've done a batch, you've done your batch, and you want to go in and see if it's So I want to go in and I'm ready to post this batch. If you just hit print on your batches, any batches, receivables, payables, it doesn't matter. You hit screen. So this will come up and it will say, you can put it to your screen. Here, sorry, I got it in Word. Let me do that again. And let it print. So right now, I just did a batch. This was my AP batch. I put in a batch. But you see here, if you do a print and edit print list on any of them, you can, if there's a error for whatever reason, so right here I did put in this, I put it in a year that was already closed. It will kind of give that to you. So if you would have posted this, you might might go into your batch recovery. It might get stuck really hard in SQL, which I've had to do, with some of these batches so this is always a good, you can kind of look at your accounts, make sure your account's right. You can make sure all the accounts are actually posted to your account. Your accounts are right. So it's just it is kind of a pain sometimes to actually have to do, to do this for every batch that you have. But it does save, I think it saves in the long run some errors and some, headaches sometimes when you're trying to post and it's not right. People use this a lot, or you guys use it? Have you found a lot of things that, yep, before you post it? Yep. So again, you could do it with a payables batch, receivable batch, sales batches, journal entries, anything like that.